Welcome back to the late day wrap up, where I am trying to make sure that I'm actually recording, and I am, so that's good. We can start it off from there. Want to be following up from Bitcoin's short-term time frame analysis from this morning as it plays out a nice $3,000 move to the upside since we last spoke, and of course follow up on all the major indices across, well, not across the lands, but just the major indices. Anyways, with that said, as always, starting off with Dixie, and what do we see right here? We do see that the $91 target from this morning's video is being hit, but that is still within the context of the greater range. And whoops, that's, well, actually I do want to see it on a weekly, but that's still within the, that still is within the context of the range between about 91 bucks to the upside and 89 3/4 to the downside, which we did say last week. We just tested the downside, now likely to test the upside. That's what we're seeing right now, and this is starting to become a little bit more in the threatening posture of an actual breakout to the upside, with tentative targets towards about 92.5, maybe even above, based off of this measure move right here. What is that based off of? In the prior history of this, we do see typically taking about 3 months long to put in these reversals on the lows, and that's actually kind of where we're at right now, taking 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, working on week number 13, it looks like. So that is actually right around that 3-month mark, and you can see in the past that they've usually been a little bit above 3 months, sometimes right on the 3-month mark, but I'm referencing this major market low right here in 2018. I'm referencing this macro low here in 2011 and 08, and in, if we go all the way back to 95 and 90 as well. So a good history of that on the macro scale, and they, as you can see, and you can count them out yourself, usually take about 3 months, a little bit longer in that case, and that's exactly where we're at right now. This one is starting to really suggest a bit of an upside pressure here. So technically speaking, I do want to see 91 bucks break on the weekly closure, but with momentum also is turning up across board, like weekly Stokes also breaking out of the bearish control zone, plus weekly RSI also looking like a nice bounce out of the bearish control zone as well. I would be looking at this as very, very likely to continue onwards and upwards, which is going to put downwards pressure on price action on all other major assets that trade against the US dollar. Does it mean that they're all just going to blindly go down? No. We've seen several times where Bitcoin or even Nasdaq or other major US indices have actually rallied alongside the dollar, but certainly the weaker ones within this past market cycle will probably get boo-caked on. So with that in mind, I would still be a little bit, you know, on guard here. Of course, you know, you want to see the actual breakout, but it certainly is starting to build up, especially on this low volatility hang at the current, well, lows. So with all of that in mind, yes, I do think that we probably get this move in March, and that very likely does test all the way back up somewhere around 90, somewhere above 92 bucks, and then we'll come back to it after that and see if there's more continuation implied or not. So moving on into our Nasdaq and our SPYs over here. Let's see, where are you? There you are, found you. We do see a nice little bounce on Nasdaq right now, bouncing up to the daily 21, or sorry, the daily 10, and we do see that lower term time frame is looking very similar to Bitcoin here too. Death cross, so you're going to zero? No, obviously not. This one's very far away from price action, not the picture of health and fitness, or not the perfect picture of certainly of a death cross in that regard. So I probably would be looking for a little bit more upside pressure here too, based off of 4-hour RSI, which is having a nice healthy stint above the bearish control zone. Very good right there. Playing out the same sort of bullish divergence as well, it should be noted, on the 4-hour as Bitcoin, although Bitcoin did have a 3 drives on that one. So I would be looking at a move, maybe even all the way up to the 55 here, somewhere around about 13.2 to 13.250-ish region, and then perhaps a bit of pressure on around that region. So short term, still a little bit of upside niggles from this morning's videos. We did say a bounce was likely here. Daily, kind of the same thing here too. We do see no divergences going on right now. And what do we see on the 2-day? Again, I do look at this as somewhat pressured down right now. So while the short term is up, it's similar to Bitcoin. Short term is up. Medium term does provide a little bit of resistance around that region and probably does still test a little bit of downside after that. And then long term macro style, as we looked at on Bitcoin, still, you know, more or less bullish. And as far as SPY goes, Nasdaq and SPY go, I still kind of do lean more towards the upside on the long term. So as always, you know, it's kind of like a delicate game here, but I'd essentially just be looking for a range between about the 10 symbol to the upside on the daily, or sorry, on the weekly, and the 21 exponential average to the downside on the weekly as well. And seeing as we're getting extremely close to the top side of that range, I probably would be looking for a little bit of a pullback relatively soon. And that, for reference, is that 13,200-ish number that we just spoke about on the 4-hour right here. So all of those pretty damn confluential with each other. And keep in mind that also would be lower highs on the 4-hour here too, and that would imply that if we're making higher highs on RSI, then hidden bearish divergence will potentially be present as long as Nasdaq fails to get back above 13,350. So all of this area right here is kind of fraught with peril. That's essentially the same thing I'm going to be looking at on Bitcoin as well. And with that said, we'll move on into SPY futures, of which we'd see more or less the same things here. This one doesn't look as medium-term dire as Nasdaq, to be fair, but we do have actually that same move up to the 10 simple here, and weekly Stokes, or sorry, daily Stokes probably kind of turn back up here too. So maybe this one actually does lead onwards and upwards, because this one is looking a lot better. We do have higher lows. We do have hidden bullish divergence coming off those lows. So I'd be looking for this one actually taking a little bit more of a stab up towards about 3,900. I do believe that's what we did say on this morning's video. But even then, I mean, it's still kind of a lower high right here, to be fair, below 39.30. So I am a bit, I'm a bit on edge on this one. This one certainly does not look as bad as, well, I wouldn't say that Nasdaq looked like super bad. I mean, anything that's closed on new all-time highs on the monthly is not like bad, right? But short term, it doesn't look as under pressure as Nasdaq, whereas SPY futures look a little bit better. I also want to check out Dow Jones just to kind of see what that one's trading like currently. And yeah, having that same sort of upside move here. And this one actually looks like this one wants to probably retest the prior all-time high. This actually looks like a bit of a bear trap to me right here with that quick move back up on an island gap low, plus momentum oscillators already having a bit of a reset here. You can see 4-hour Stochs already hitting this, or basically going to be hitting this trend line. So we'll be looking at that as guarding against the bearish control zone. And do we have hidden bullish divergence? Actually, no, we do not. But overall, this one actually does look a lot better. So I usually go with the average of the major indices. In this case, both Dow Jones and SPY futures looking, better short and medium term than Nasdaq, so I'd probably favor those ones over Nasdaq's analysis. And then we'll play into Bitcoin over here, which we'll get into after gold. Which, where the fuck is gold? Hey, where did my gold go? Where is my damn gold? There it is, found it. All right, 1740-ish region. We did say that we would have a target down to about 1700 based off of last week's closure, and I would still be sticking with that. Basically, I don't really see any real reason to change this one. We've been, I guess, technically bearish on this one ever since 1850 broke about a month and a half ago. Yeah, back into early January, it looks like. And while, I definitely expressed a bit of skepticism with this one, it just kind of slowly but surely slunk on down, following the trend. Crazy shit. So yeah, I'll still be looking for this one to make a stab, maybe a little bit below 1700, somewhere around like 1690 to 1680-ish region, but I would be looking for bounce within that region off of the monthly. I believe that's a monthly 21 right here. Yes, it is. Typically, that will bounce on first pass, and I don't believe that we've passed it just yet. So with that in mind, 4 hours, obviously very much in a downtrend, and this one continues to continue down as actually a daily death cross is kind of being threatened here too, as you see the green 55 and the purple 200 inch closer and closer towards each other. This one is just simply continuation to myself, so I'd be looking further south here. Bounces anywhere right below 1700 is kind of where I'd be looking for on this one. Anyways, moving on to Bitcoin now. So Bitcoin, following up on this morning's video, right? We were looking at the lower term time frames like the 2, 3, and an hourly, of which all of them were kind of suggesting that we had potential hidden bearish divergence potentially in play. That was on this dildo right here, but that would have only been confirmed to follow up on this morning's video if we closed below this guy right here, low, which was essentially on the, I believe that was on the live stream actually, at 46,000 bucks. That actually never happened, so that hidden bearish divergence still has yet to be solidified, and technically speaking, you do still have potential hidden bearish divergence all the way up to a 4-hour, as long as Bitcoin is operating off of that lower high structure, which your last lower high is coming in from 51,000 bucks. Short term, however, obviously still playing out the regular bullish divergence over here. So it's like it's a tale of two divergences for right now, of which we had 1, 2, 3 drives off the lows, and that did give Bitcoin a bit of a a short-term, medium-term upside bias. But now we're kind of coming into the next area that is a bit shaky here, where we have well, we technically haven't taken out the 48,500-ish level just yet, but it's looking rather likely with only 14 minutes and 18 seconds left to go to closure. So I'd be looking at this as likely to try a little bit higher, probably somewhere around 50,000 bucks, maybe even all the way up to 51,000 bucks. But I still remain a little bit short-term, medium-term hesitant on Bitcoin as long as it is below, again, this $51,000 pivot, or on a closing basis, whatever this closure was right here, which is basically 51,000 bucks. It's like 50,879 on Mexico. I think it's just easier to say 51,000 bucks at this point. Or you can use a wick continuation as well, using the high of the 20th of February, and both of those would denote continuation all the way up to about 55,000 bucks right here, and that's where the higher term timeframes once again come into fruition, meaning that I'm not necessarily looking for Bitcoin to go back into trending new all-time high mode until Bitcoin gets at least a 4-hour closure above 55,000 bucks or a daily above 54,000 bucks. If one of those two things happens, I'd be looking for a retest the prior all-time high and very likely new all-time highs. However, right now I do think that Bitcoin is still in a bit of a threatening posture, just because I keep on glancing at the monthly over here. And the main message that I wanted to have on this morning's video was that, hey, pretty much every time that Bitcoin has closed a monthly above the topside Toronto band, we do come back down to test the topside Toronto band, which is around that $40,000-ish region, anywhere between about $39,000 to $40,000, which is tentatively where I really would like to get into a long-term play on Bitcoin. Doesn't mean it's going to happen, of course, and let's actually go to BLX index so you can see this for yourself. And quite literally every time that, yes, Bitcoin has been trending above the topside Toronto band on the monthly, or just about most time frames, we do see that area retested. In fact, yeah, actually literally every time. Yeah, every time. So with that in mind, I do still look at that as a potential to happen. And again, that is lower. So that would imply that Bitcoin actually does put in a lower high and probably trade back down. Does that happen, this week or next week? I don't know about that, but I would say that if that fails to happen within the next couple of weeks, very unlikely to happen in general, as this monthly, as we looked at from this morning's video, is giving me really no real reason to be bearish on this price action. The major reason being the accumulation distribution indicator right here, also known as the net delta indicator, of which not only do we still have a positive slope on it, we actually increased the curvature of the slope, which any time in Bitcoin's history when we had a positive slope, you've basically been in a bull market. Anytime that you've had a negative slope, you've basically been in a bear market, or, well, you can sometimes read it as consolidation as well, but you can backtest this yourself. It works on just about all of the macro time frames, basically call them all more or less perfectly from what we've seen. So with all of that in mind, I do still look at this as very, 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 very important right here. And it does give me an overall bullish bias as Bitcoin, 1, closed above the topside Toronto band, 2, accumulation distribution indicator having a positive slope, MACD histogram also increasing. So momentum is going alongside all of this, plus volatility, plus what we see on the accumulation distribution indicator, and the DMI plus is also still dominant with the ADX extremely strong right here as well. So all of these things working together is good. And of course, we actually did close a bi-monthly here too, which I forgot to look at on this morning's video. And same kind of issues here as well. The topside Toronto band is coming in right around about $38,000 as it is right now. So never have we ever seen Bitcoin not test the topside Toronto band for closing above it on the on the monthly or bi-monthly. Obviously, the bi-monthly is not going to have as much history to really be going over, but still, I do think that it quite matters, because that is just your general sort of knowledge with Trollander bands to begin with. So with all of that in mind, I am bullish on Bitcoin long term. The question is, does Bitcoin come back down, make another run towards maybe just below $40,000, or does it just boost up from here and just pull those babies up? And fair enough, we have our first iteration of that. Could be obviously both are possible, but I do tend to favor the one that's more historically relevant, as that also would play into the narrative that Bitcoin typically does play out these historical pullbacks of about 30 to 40%. So thus far, we have seen, as Bitcoin comes down from the $58,000 high right here to thus far are about $42,500 low. That's about a 27% move to the downside. That is quite large, no doubt about it. No doubt about it at all. Compare that with the last pullback that Bitcoin had. And again, you can also just read this as crash, but pullback, fair enough. 31 and 33%. Fair, okay, well, very, very interesting, right? Because it's actually very much in line with what we saw in the prior bull run from about 2015 to 2017, with all of these pullbacks taking about, on average, well, actually, this one was 27% to be fair, so we'll just pretend that one didn't happen. No, I mean, it is an outlier on the downside. We have 38.5% to the downside right here on this pullback. We have this one at about 32.5% right there. We have this one at about 32% and 32.25% right there. We have this one at about 40% right there. We have this one on about 40% as well right there. And we have this one on about 30 and some odd percent right there. And thus far, have we necessarily done that? No, it's pretty damn close, definitely comparable, but let's just play around with numbers for a second and see what would a 30 or so percent pullback look like. That's actually rather interesting now, isn't it? Because a 32% pullback, which is kind of like the mean of what we saw in all of those, would put Bitcoin right back down around, just below $40,000. So I do think that move is still very much possible here. But my main message that I want to be very, very clear with, and of course it's not financial advice, I'm not a financial advisor, is that I'd be looking at that as an opportunity personally. I'd be looking at that as a major opportunity long term, as I don't really have any real reason to believe that this party's over just yet. For the long term in the macro, of course. So with all of that in mind, just lining all these things up, I do think that you know, I do think that Bitcoin actually still could have that downside move here. It doesn't mean that it has to, but I do think that historically speaking, it's a little more relevant for what we're looking at right now. Does that interfere with the short term? Perhaps yes, perhaps no, but I would be looking again as Bitcoin in a threatening posture as long as it's below this $51,000 pivot right here. And right now it's like starting to come into a bit of short-term resistance. The hourly 200 simple. We do see the 4-hour, well, the 4 hour is actually looking fine to be fair. So you know what, at the end of the day, I'd still just be going range to range in this case. And we do see that Bitcoin does have some pretty obviously delineated ranges, of which if this next 4-hour doodle closes above 48,500, which is looking very, very likely in the next 8 minutes, I'd probably be looking for this one to travel a little bit higher, maybe somewhere around 50,000 bucks. And then if it fails to get past the prior high, then I'd be looking for the downside to be tested once again. And tentatively speaking, I would absolutely love to get those positions a little bit lower, but doesn't mean that it has to happen. So with all of that in mind, if Bitcoin does close above 51,000 bucks, that's the next medium-term time frame move, at least for myself, back up to about 55,000 bucks. That's where the long-term can once again come into motion. And if that area gets taken out, then I'm looking for a retest of prior all-time highs and probably new all-time highs after that. And the party continues based off the monthly and all higher-term time frames. So I do think that's a good place to kind of leave this video off here. I probably did a little bit too much for this one, which is supposed to be more of a short video. We'll be back on with another live stream tomorrow, assuming all goes well and I get another good night's sleep. And with that said, I want to salute you, take care, and until next time.